These three girls, Josie, Bertha, and Sophie, aren't just posing for a photograph. They're 6 and 10 years old, and it's 4 in the morning. Their small hands, already blistered and raw, are about to start another shift shucking oysters in the damp, cold factories of South Carolina. The year is 1912, and this image, colorized from its original black and white, was taken by Lewis Hine to expose the brutal truth of child labor in America. Look at their faces. There's no childhood here. No toys, no laughter, just exhaustion and silent strength. Their boots are worn, their clothes stained, but their eyes, those eyes, stare directly into history, begging not to be forgotten. This isn't just a photo. It's a scar carved into the soul of a nation that let its children work before they learned to write. She was just 16 when the darkness began to whisper. Anneliese Michel, a quiet German teenager, started blacking out in school. Then came the convulsions. But what followed was beyond science. She began eating spiders, drinking her own urine, and screaming in voices that didn't sound human. Doctors diagnosed epilepsy and psychosis. But her devout parents believed something ancient had taken hold. 67 exorcisms followed, recorded in chilling audio tapes. In less than a year, her body gave out. At just 67 pounds, Anneliese died in 1976, her face bruised, her soul exhausted. Was she a victim of medical neglect or spiritual warfare? Her death ignited one of Germany's most controversial trials. And even now, nearly 50 years later, her photo still asks one haunting question. What really happened to Anneliese Michel? Belfast, 1970s. Two women press a man against a cold wall. Graffiti above him screams, "Brits out." But this isn't a movie. It's real. These aren't soldiers. They're members of the Irish Republican Army. Armed, focused, unshakable. In a conflict where trust was deadly and suspicion could mean survival, even women became frontline enforcers. The man being searched? No one remembers his name. But this photo froze a moment where rebellion, gender, and terror collided. The troubles weren't just bombs and speeches. They were lived, day by day, by people like her. Her finger tight on the trigger, her eyes locked on history. This image doesn't just show defiance. It captures a generation born into war and taught that silence could kill. In the shadows of Belfast, even the walls knew which side you were on. Before she was Jack Black's mom, Judith Love Cohen was busy saving astronauts. Literally. In 1970, her work on NASA's abort guidance system helped bring Apollo 13 back from the edge of death. But few know, she reviewed technical documents while in labor. That same day, she gave birth to a baby boy who'd become a Hollywood star. But Judith wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing purpose. At a time when less than 1% of engineers were women, she built spacecraft and a legacy. After retiring, she wrote books to help young girls believe they could build rockets too. This image? It's not just science or celebrity. It's a time capsule of brilliance, courage, and quiet rebellion. And proof that sometimes, behind every famous face, is a woman who changed the world and never asked for credit. Marion Bevan was once a nurse, a wife, and a loving mother of 4. But when a rare disorder, acromegaly, began to distort her features, life took a devastating turn. After the sudden death of her husband, she was left alone, grieving and penniless. In a world obsessed with beauty, she was forced to sell her appearance to survive. She entered sideshows, branded as the world's ugliest woman. But behind the cruel label was a mother's fierce love, a woman who chose humiliation over hunger so her children could eat. This isn't a story of deformity. It's a story of resilience, sacrifice, and unbreakable strength. Mary didn't chase pity. She chased dignity in a world that offered her none. Today, we remember her not for how she looked, but for how deeply she loved and how bravely she endured. She stands alone, but she carries a nation's grief. In this haunting image from 1976, a Polish woman clutches a photo of her murdered husband, a victim of the Katyn massacre. His face, frozen in time, stares from her chest as she wipes her tears at the unveiling of a memorial in London. Starobielsk, May 1940. One of the sites where over 22,000 Polish officers were slaughtered by Soviet forces, buried in silence, denied for decades. For years, families like hers were told it never happened. But truth doesn't stay buried. This photo isn't just about loss. It's about justice, remembrance, and the power of memory. Behind her sorrow lies quiet defiance, a refusal to let history erase the ones she loved. Some wounds never heal, but photographs like this make sure they're never forgotten. They were once the poster boys of French science television, handsome, brilliant, and mysterious. Grichka and Igor Bogdanov lit up screens in the 1980s with their charisma and matching charm. But decades later, the world was stunned. Their faces, now unrecognizable, became the subject of fascination, rumors, and endless speculation. Plastic surgery? Genetic experimentation? They never confirmed the extent. What began as a quest for timeless beauty became a haunting transformation etched in skin. But beyond the headlines and memes, these were men chasing immortality, in science, in media, in legacy. Their journey forces us to ask, how far would you go to control how the world sees you? In one photo, they were icons. In the other, enigmas. Two brothers. One story, forever changed by time, ambition, and something the mirror could never reflect, obsession. She was only 11, but her eyes already held the weight of a world on fire. In this rare 1941 photo, Anne Frank sits at her desk in the Merwiedplein apartment, moments before history would turn her life into a whisper. Her pen, innocent and determined, etched words that would one day echo across generations. At this point, she didn't know she'd be hunted. She didn't know she'd hide. She didn't know her voice would outlive the silence of war. That desk was her safe place, her resistance, her legacy. Every line she wrote was a rebellion against erasure. And though her life was stolen, her story remains unshakable. This isn't just a girl with a diary. This is a symbol of hope, resilience, and the haunting beauty of a voice the world refused to forget. She walked into the courtroom not just as a defendant, but as a storm. Joan Little, 20 years old, stood trial in 1975 for killing a white jailer. But this wasn't just murder. It was survival. She said he tried to rape her, so she used the ice pick he brought to defend herself. The nation exploded. Was she a criminal or a symbol? Feminists, civil rights leaders, and everyday Americans saw in her story something deeper about race, gender, power, and justice. She faced the death penalty, alone, terrified, but defiant. Her case shook the system, revealing the cracks Black women had long been buried under. And in that courtroom, Joan Little didn't just fight for her life. She ignited a movement. One photo, one woman, one moment that refused to stay silent. Before the scandals, before the headlines, there was this photo. Jeffrey Epstein, a 22-year-old high school teacher at New York's elite Dalton School in 1975. He taught math and science. But beneath the smile and charm was a man whose future would become one of the darkest mysteries of modern America. Hired despite lacking a college degree, he was already navigating elite circles, gaining access to wealth and power that would later shield his crimes. No one could have imagined the storm that would follow, the web of influence, the secrets, the victims. This wasn't just a yearbook photo. It was the calm before a decades-long nightmare. A reminder, monsters don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes they teach in classrooms. And sometimes history leaves warnings hidden in plain sight. February 5, 1945. The gates of Santo Tomas internment camp in the Philippines swing open, and the world sees the cost of survival. Lee Rogers, a retired Navy Yard worker, and John C. Todd, a 63-year-old miner, sit in silence. Their bones protrude through skin, their eyes hollow. For 4 years, they endured brutal captivity under the Japanese army during World War II. No food, no rights, no dignity, just endurance. This photo doesn't just show liberation. It captures the aftermath of inhumanity. They were civilians, not soldiers, yet became prisoners of war. Forgotten by time, remembered in pain. Every wrinkle, every scar, tells a story of survival few could imagine. This is what war leaves behind. Not just history, but haunted faces that never truly escape. June 18, 1964. St. Augustine, Florida. A peaceful act of defiance turns into horror. Civil rights activists, both black and white, entered the Monson Motor Lodge pool to protest segregation. What happened next is burned into history. James Brock, the motel manager, approached calmly and poured muriatic acid into the water, into the pool, where human beings were swimming. He smiled, believing he was cleaning contamination. But the only thing dirty was the hatred. This wasn't just an attack on bodies. It was an attack on dignity, on courage, on the right to exist equally. The image shocked the world, accelerating the Civil Rights Act. But for those in that pool, that moment would never wash off. History remembers. So do they? 1947. She wasn't Marilyn yet. No diamonds. No spotlights. Just Norma Jean, brushing the soft hair of a baby, arms wrapped around innocence. The world would one day see a sex symbol, a legend, a tragic icon. But here, she was simply a young woman, full of tenderness, laughter, and a quiet dream. These moments, away from the camera's glare, reveal a side history often forgets. The side before the fame, before the heartbreak, before the world claimed her. There's something hauntingly beautiful in seeing her like this, as if we caught a whisper of the life she might have had, a life untouched by Hollywood. Sometimes, the most powerful photos are the ones taken before the world starts watching. 1943. In a classroom in Nazi Germany, a young girl learns not science, but ideology. With pointer in hand, she repeats what she's been told. Measurements of skulls, categories of noses, the so-called superior race. Behind her, a teacher nods, affirming hatred disguised as knowledge. This was how it began, not with bullets, but blackboards. Not with violence, but with lessons. Children like her were molded not just to obey, but to believe. This image is haunting not for what it shows, but for what it foreshadows. Genocide begins long before the camps. It begins here, in ordinary rooms with posters and pencils. A quiet indoctrination that grew into the loudest horrors the world had ever seen. The danger of a lie, taught as truth. 1906. A lone rider descends a vertical cliff, calm, composed, unshaken. It's not a stunt. It's a lesson. At the Italian cavalry school, bravery wasn't optional. It was expected. Horses were trained to obey even when instincts screamed no. Riders were taught to trust even when death stared back. This photo captures more than military tradition. It freezes a mindset that courage was discipline and fear just another obstacle to conquer. One slip, and both would fall. Yet here they are, balanced between mastery and madness, man and beast moving as one. It's a breathtaking image not of action, but of restraint, of harmony, of a forgotten era when honor was measured in silence, not spectacle. A single photo, and yet an entire philosophy carved into the mountain. Before he became America's most beloved judge, he was just a 7-year-old boy in a hand-me-down suit, standing proudly beside the man who taught him everything. This rare photo captures young Frank Caprio with his father, a hard-working Italian immigrant who believed that justice started at home, with kindness, humility, and respect. Frank would grow up to embody those values in a courtroom that didn't feel like a courtroom. People didn't fear him. They cried with him. He didn't wear the robe for power. He wore it for people like his father, who never got to finish school but taught his son how to listen with his heart. Judge Caprio passed away recently after a battle with cancer, but his legacy isn't found in law books. It's in every smile he gave, every second chance he offered. And it all started here, with a boy, a dream, and a father who believed in both. In 1957, this wasn't science fiction, it was the American dream on four wheels. A family parked at a futuristic drive-in, sipping milkshakes while giant hoses pumped cold air directly into their car. This image captures more than just innovation. It's the golden glow of post-war optimism, when comfort was king and convenience became a lifestyle. The father sips his drink with pride, the mother smiles softly, and the little girl in the back seat? She's wide-eyed, not from the cold, but from the magic of it all. It was an era that believed technology could solve everything, even the summer heat. But behind the chrome and smiles, a question lingers. Did we trade simplicity for spectacle? This frozen moment isn't just about air conditioning. It's about a society that believed more was always better. And in chasing the future, maybe, just maybe, we left something warm behind. Before he walked the halls of the White House, Barack Obama ran the hardwood of a high school gym in Honolulu. This isn't just a photo of a teenager going for a layup. It's a snapshot of untold beginnings. Number 23 on the junior varsity team, Obama wasn't the star, not yet. But every missed shot, every sprint, every sweaty practice laid the groundwork for a man who'd one day carry the weight of a nation. Look closer. He's not soaring above defenders with raw talent. He's grinding, rising through sheer will. The same will that would one day lead to speeches that moved millions and decisions that shaped history. From bounce passes to ballots, from buzzer beaters to breakthroughs. This is where the journey began. Not in Washington, but in a quiet gym in Hawaii, with a ball, a dream, and a fire no one saw coming. Because greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just gets to work. In 1956, while the world obsessed over diamonds and pearls, and Frances wore parakeets. Yes, real parakeets as earrings. In a single photograph, she shattered every expectation of Hollywood glam. And wasn't just a starlet. She was a storm in silk, a rebel wrapped in gold lame. This image wasn't about fashion. It was about audacity. Who else could make something so outrageous look so effortlessly elegant? Behind the iconic look was a woman unafraid to defy trends, to provoke stares, to spark conversation without saying a word. Hollywood polished its stars and cracked the mold. Long before Lady Gaga's meat dress or Bjork's swan, and Frances made a statement that whispered louder than any scream. Beauty is not what you wear, it's how daring you are to wear it. This isn't just a quirky photo. It's a snapshot of a woman who knew exactly who she was and dared the world to catch up.